we're so excited to welcome you to Midlife Reset 2.0. We had Midlife Reset 1.0, and so many of you asked, can you please invite men? So we listened, and today we have men joining us. I'm Pam George, and alongside my friend Rita Laulman, she's co-hosting this conversation with Rita, and our coaches, and together we lead coaching groups that help people move from overwhelm to calm clarity. We both have been trained in neuroscience, and Rita specifically neuroencoding, and I specifically in trauma-informed care. We both use nervous systems, brain health, and spiritual biblical principles to really help us stay grounded and supported for lasting change. They've invited some special guests. So first, I'm going to introduce our male guest. Thank you so much, Dr. Debo. Rita, would you mind introducing Dr. Debo, who's going to give us that male perspective today?
It's exciting to see all of you. It's wonderful that you made some time for yourself. We all need to make time for ourselves. I would love to warmly invite our guest on panel, Dr. Debo. He is an internationally trained family physician whose medical journey spans across Nigeria, Ireland, United States, UK, and now in Canada. At the heart, Dr. Debo's work in commitments to adults, feeding the physical and emotional transitions of midlife. He has walked alongside countless individuals experiencing struggles, unexplained fatigue, disrupted sleep, shifting moods, and a quiet loss of vitality. So often without clear answers, his approach blends medical science with compassion and wisdom and spiritual insight. So he has helped connect people, find meaning, change, and move through seasons of transition with clarity, dignity, and renewed hope. Forward to hearing from you and gaining all those nuggets and insights that we can actually start practicing. So thank you.
Interesting.
I'm going to go and introduce Tammy Fleming. Tammy has just grown to become such a dear friend in my life. She is a global missionary who's traveled around the world and planted over 29 churches. She's also a grief specialist, and she's spent decades walking alongside people through loss, transition, and deep life change. She hosts grief recovery groups around the world, creating the safe space where people can name their pain, process loss, and move forward with hope. So Tammy's going to bring a grounded, compassionate voice to this conversation. She's going to help us understand the emotional and relational layers of midlife in a way that is both honest and deeply healing. Thanks.
All right. So we go ahead and dive into our questions at this time. This first question that I'm going to have is for Dr. Debo. I know that our tagline that we used was something feels off. Dr. Debo, many people, after they turn 40, they say, I don't feel like myself anymore, although nothing is technically wrong. From your perspective, what normal changes happen in body and in brain that can explain that feeling for them?
I like to describe it more like the running of a car. And then, as you can imagine, if you do have a car, if there's a lot of gas in the car, you see the car moves smoothly, right? And if there's not enough fuel, the car still moves, but it at this time needs a different kind of care in to look after it. But let's say you have no fuel, there's no gas, or it's almost gone, then you see that it feels harder. It hardly moves. It doesn't even leave one spot. So for us, for everyone here today, after the age of 40, you can still do a lot of things. You find yourself getting tired faster. Recovery may take longer than usual. Your body might become less forgiving. So what is really happening to the body? What is really happening to the brain at this time? I suppose this is the question that most people want to ask. So we do know that the brain is a very important organ in the body. And for so many times, a lot of people just think like the brain is just like an isolated box that does its own thing completely different from the other part of the body. But that is not actually true. Because what we do know from science is that the brain is in constant interaction with the rest of the body, and most importantly, with the reproductive system. So there is an interaction between the brain and the reproductive system, particularly with regards to brain aging. This interaction between the brain and the body is mediated by hormones. And we know that the hormone level doesn't differ in male and in female. In the male, you have more of the testosterone, while in the female, you have more of the estrogen. For the men, the testosterone doesn't run out until late in life, but from the midlife, from 40s, it starts to slowly, gradually reduce in amount, and particularly for midlife. But in the female, estrogen also starts fluctuating from midlife, say after the 40 fluctuations in the hormone, and towards menopause, it begins to fade. And this is where we start to see symptoms like hot flushes, night sweats. What we need to understand, most importantly, is that most of these symptoms that we see, they don't really start from the ovary, because the ovaries produce these hormones like estrogen in the man, where the testosterone is produced. Most of these changes actually start from the brain. It occurs, it starts from the brain gets the signal first, and there's a lot of scientific evidence to back this as well, that a lot of neuroimaging scans that have been done shows that when the level of the hormones, the estrogen in the women or the testosterone in the men, when the level goes down, we see there are changes that start to happen in the brain. The brain starts rewiring itself. The brain starts to do a shift in energy because the energy level starts to reduce. We see a lot of structural changes happening in the brain, like a full reset. So when these changes happen in the brain, all these symptoms like the mood changes, the hot flushes, the brain fog, we start to see all of these things coming into play. So these changes are actually neurological symptoms. That means from the brain. But most of the time, we don't see them that way. We think, oh, it's just primarily my ovarian problem, or it's a problem with the testes. But actually, the brain has a lot to do with this. And what happens is that these hormones, they don't just only involve in reproduction, but they are also vital in the role of energy production in the brain. So the estrogen in the female, the testosterone in the male, they are very vital for energy production in the brain. These hormones literally push all the neurons in the brain, to mobilize glucose for energy production. But when these hormones are low in midlife, energy production dips. When the hormones are high before 40, the energy production is pretty quite high. So we see that it's important correlation with the symptoms that we get after midlife is as a result of interactions with the body, and the brain reduces hormone level. The evidence that we see in real life, the body is trying to push, but they can't really do much. So you are more in before 40, you're in a performance mode. But once you become 40, it's now a sustainability mode. And what that means is that you need to now pace your activity because of reduced energy. You need to listen to your body more. You need more rest. And you need to protect the little energy that you have. There's actually nothing wrong. It's just that the rule has changed. You need to move from pushing through things that you could do before 40 to now planning wisely. It's just like the brain is now running on a budget because of low energy.
Dr. Debo, I appreciate you naming what we're feeling and why we don't have the energy we had in our youth. Thank you for telling us about the estrogen and how our brain needs a little bit more support from the outside because that level has gone down. And for men, it's testosterone. And then we have to be a little bit more careful because we're not going to recover as quickly. And so you're really naming those things for us, why it affects our sleep, it affects our mood. So I would really encourage audience to just take notes. It explains why am I so tired all the time? And what do I need to do? And why is the doctor telling me to do some strength training? We also want to understand the emotional, the relational, the spiritual component to all of these things happening to us.
Wow, me too. I was actually taking notes on this lesson. But Tammy, I think this question is for you. When there's no clear diagnosis, but people still feel unsettled or they feel lost, what emotional or identity level grief, it could be a form of grief we don't know. Would you be able to throw some light on it?
Sure, Rita. And this really goes along well with what Dr. Debo was saying. Our negative emotions sap our energy as well. And I don't know if, and I think probably everybody on this call can relate to this, that in early childhood, you've all seen little children, probably, who express their emotions. They process their emotions naturally when they're really young, before 2, 3. Something bad happens to them, which is normal in life, right? You fall, you have a disappointment, you get disciplined, you eat something you don't like, and their entire body is involved. They laugh and their whole body is laughing. They cry and the whole house knows it, right? If something's wrong. And of course, we have to learn how to appropriately express those emotions as we grow older, right? We don't want to be a dysregulated toddler the rest of our lives. However, I'm sure most of us will agree that in our upbringing, there was some teaching, some influences that we got from probably all well-meaning people, and probably sadly also some traumatic lessons we received that taught us not the best ways to manage negative emotions when they come up. For example, many of us probably heard from our parents, if you're going to cry, go to your room. And sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes that's not appropriate. How many of us who are parents have ever reacted to your children in a way where you know that you overreacted, they were just coming, I've done this. I'm thinking about my preteens and teens, right? When they would come to me and say, interrupting me, Mom, can you, and I'm in the middle of something, I'm stressed, I don't have time at work, and I snap at them, right? And so what do they learn? Okay, most kids will internalize, if that happens regularly, they'll internalize that there's something wrong with me. I just got rebuked for, I shouldn't. And it's in, I think, probably, I won't say all because I don't know, but most cultures, there's a Chinese proverb that says, eat bitterness. If you feel bad, just swallow it. I'm from an Irish family. The Irish don't say goodbye. And I was raised in a climate where anything unpleasant goes under the rug. You don't talk about it. You don't say goodbye. You don't talk about someone dying. If someone's really ill, you minimize. And so what I learned, and what many of us learn, is that unpleasant emotions are just not welcome. And that is really dangerous, because what happens is we arrive in our midlife and there's emotions equal energy. I was completely ignorant to this. I thought I was doing fine. But everyone's life, by the time we're 40, we've all had a long list. This is normal, that we wish we had done and others had done that were different or better or more in our life. That's grief. We all have had experiences where we've had hopes, dreams, expectations for relationships, and they haven't come to pass. And those are grief events. If those are significant relationships, those are grief events. I always thought, I was taught also to focus on the good, silver lining, everything's going to be okay. And I do believe that. However, there's also another side, and I never was taught to process painful things. I was taught you stuff it by example, right? You stuff it, you are strong for other people, and you just march on. And as Dr. Debo was saying, our bodies, by the time we're in midlife, they just are not as resilient as they were in our 20s. And that's a hard truth to accept, because we feel powerful, right? We feel like, no, I'm in my prime. I should be able to continue to do what I always do, but we just can't. And we come up against, if we're not ready for this and not thinking about it, not only the physical limitations that are slowly beginning to adjust and change, but also emotionally, we cannot handle this accumulated load that most of us simply keep adding to and adding to, telling ourselves, I can do it. I'm just going to be strong. I'm just going to be positive. I'm just going to look for the silver lining. But there's energy being drained from us just in that action of telling ourselves, nope, it's okay. I don't need to go there. The past is in the past. there's a balance, right? It's not an either or. That will not serve us. We need to embrace in midlife and actually early life, if we could teach our children, it would serve them fabulously to appropriately process difficult, sad emotions as they happen. But most of us do get to midlife with quite a huge backlog of unprocessed disappointment. Many people think that grief is only when you're bereaved, someone has passed away, but that is so far from true. Grief is a normal, natural part of everybody's life. We've all lost someone or something that's important to us. And quite often we just aren't taught the tools to process it well, other than just, there are lots of other people who have it worse than you. So just be grateful. That's a piece of it, but there's a whole other side that we must address, or else that energy is going to be even less in our bodies because there's so much that's being suppressed by what we're not processing.
I think about how unprocessed emotions were draining my energy. I know we were all taught, I know I was taught culturally that, even spiritually, that swallow your bitterness, push through, stay strong, keep going. But then when we don't process that emotions, our bodies are actually keeping a score or carrying it physically. And then the weight shows up and we're exhausted. And there's those signs that Dr. Debo was talking about, the brain fog and the loss of vitality. And I used to wonder, like, why don't I have the spiritual energy I had before? But I think about the gifts God has given us midlife as a season where we're not just getting through, but we're being formed. And God uses this midlife to slow us down, to surface what's been buried, to shape us into deeper depth of truth and compassion. But we have to allow ourselves to feel, name, and bring those emotions to the light with God and with safe people, because energy begins to return, not because life gets easier, but because we're no longer carrying it alone.
Tammy, can you tell us, how does this unprocessed grief, how does it get internalized, the loss, the grief, as something is wrong with me rather than something important is changing? So are you able to tell us about that?
I think that probably has a lot to do with what was going on in early childhood. For example, when I was young, I was an only child of older parents, and both of them passed away pretty early in my life. I was age 10 when my dad fell really ill, and then 12 when he died. No one else that I knew had lost a parent. And so that's a bad thing, right? Somebody dies that close to you, that's traumatic, it's hard. And even though I knew it wasn't my fault, our brains are wired such to problem solve, right? Everything that happens, we immediately want to figure out why. We want an answer. And so the conclusion I came to, since this is a bad thing, it has not happened to anybody else but to me, therefore something must be wrong with me, because that's the only thing that makes sense. I realize now that is definitely what I internalized from that traumatic loss that was not handled super well. I told you my family was a family of avoidance and denial. And again, super well-meaning. I love them all, grateful to them. But I just sucked that up and carried that. And then you start looking with a faulty lens at things. Right. Now, you may have a completely different experience. It's really not helpful to compare experiences and losses and our reactions to them, because everybody is unique. Everybody is different. However, hopefully you can think about the fact that no one has a perfect upbringing. And things happen. We don't always have the wise voice in our ear interpreting for us in the best way the events that are happening to us. I was a timid child. I hid things. And so I didn't have someone that I felt was safe and trustworthy. Again, no one's fault around me. That was just my choice. And so I grew up with this feeling of being defective. And I think lots of people do that. By the time you get to midlife, all of us have lenses that probably could do with being examined. But we don't always have the tools. We don't always have the people nearby who can help us interpret the way that we're looking at things. It's just the way we look at things. You don't realize. Fish don't realize they're swimming in water because they've always swum in water. We don't think often about the air that we breathe. It's just there. But it's really important that we, at some point, do become aware of the fact how we think, how we view things. And unfortunately, quite often, by the time we get to midlife, There are some beliefs that we have in our belief system, certainly around loss and grief, that don't serve us well, that we've been using automatically for a long time, like my faulty view of my own defectiveness.
I just wanted to also just respond to what Tammy just said. I appreciate you sharing that those beliefs are formed so early in childhood, because that really resonated with me, because there's so many stories that we lived that we didn't really choose, but we interpreted it when we were young. And I think about in my book, Sparkle, I share about how I misinterpreted events that happened in my own life and then carried those meanings forward without even realizing it. So midlife often becomes that moment when God gently invites us to revisit those early conclusions, not with shame, but with compassionate truth. So there's healing and freedom that can take place. So thank you for just addressing that and helping us really navigate this unprocessed grief. Welcome, Penny Cox. Penny is joining us. I know we have people from different time zones, and we really appreciate you making it here. So Dr. Penny Cox is a medical doctor, and you're based in London, and you have decades of experience caring for adults through complex life and health transitions. And you help us understand what's happening in our bodies, but you're honoring the whole person.
Are you able to tell us, how do hormonal changes in one partner and stress or changes in the other create misunderstanding or emotional distance in relationships? Like, how does the hormonal change impact our relationship as we go through midlife?
I think because of the potential for impact on our mood and therefore the way that we interact with our other half. And because it's perhaps mood related, it's often, we might have a tendency to interpret our spouse wrongly as, oh, they're having a bad day or they're in a difficult place at the moment. But rather than taking the time to listen and explore and talk through new patterns and new changes, then they're really high risk to the closeness in the relationship, because it takes time to work our way through these things. And every person is different, every couple is different. And all the ways that we might have worked together really well as a couple in the past are put under a new strain. And it's often not easy to see when you're in the middle of it, perhaps until you even look back at how somehow things have changed and they're not what they were before. And what's wrong with the other person? Why aren't they the person that I used to know? So I think being aware of the possibility of changes any time from midlife on, it'd be good for couples to have their antennae up to think, okay, is this just a bad day, a difficult day at work or week or month? Or is there more going on here that we need to be aware of and that we can then discuss and work through?
Excellent. Penny, I think that is such a great thing to be aware of, because I know I've been married now for more than 3 decades, and every decade seemed to have brought on a new change. And sometimes we spiritualize it or we blame the other person and the situation or environment, and we fail to think that it could be our bodies changing. It could be just how we're responding to our current environment. So thank you for giving us that insight. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Debo this question. What struggle do men commonly face after 40 in terms of energy, mood, sleep, motivation, that often go unnamed or get expressed indirectly as irritability, withdrawal, or overwork? Because it's so easy for us to kind of explain what is on the outside, but not really know what's happening on the inside or where it came from.
So to answer this question, as we were saying earlier, we have to first and foremost understand that most of all these changes, the hormonal changes we see, are actually neurological. That means they are all starting off in the brain. The process starts up in the brain after the age of 40 or in the midlife, as we said, because the hormones levels dropping down. we see that the brain is changing, restructuring. There's a lot of rewiring going on in the brain. And this gets exemplified as what we see as physical symptoms. Particularly in men, most of these things don't happen dramatically. It's not drastic. It's usually very gradual. Unlike in the women that it starts fluctuating and eventually it will decline. But in men, it's a very gradual process. And men have to realize first that their system is changing. There's a lot of changes in the body. There's a lot of changes going on in the brain. So the energy level is dropping, but the expectations don't drop. For men, there's so many responsibilities that you need to take care of. So because of these, men often think that I can still do everything. But the only thing they notice is that it's costing them more. So you need more energy to do the same thing that you were able to do before. Take, for instance, like a full day work that used to be very manageable, now is draining him so much that when he gets home, he has just little left to give emotionally. So what it looks like is you come back home after work, the evening is just very quiet. You can't really say much, you can't do much. Your partner is talking to you and you just give short answers, one answer, two answer. The only thing on your head as a man at that time is you just want to be left alone. If only you're saying to yourself, if only she understands that I just have to be left alone right now, that I just want to be alone for now. And this is not because the mind intentionally wants to ignore the partner, it's just because of low energy. We also look at sleep. So sleep changes very quietly as well. And this can affect everything. For most men, they find themselves sleeping lighter or waking up earlier than usual. And then if they don't even feel rested, even if they've slept like 6 to 7 hours, but they wake up, they're still feeling very tense, they're feeling very tired, they're already behind for the day. And how does this show up in life? It shows up as being irritability. Most of the time, the emotion is very close to the surface for no particular reason. And you're just wondering what is going on. But the truth of the matter is, when you're getting poor sleep, it erodes your patience. Even before the next day starts, you're already tired. Dr. Penny talked about mood as well. So there's going to be some mood shifts because of the low hormone. The testosterone is dropping. But men don't usually call this as low mood. You rarely hear men say, I'm feeling anxious or I feel low. It's very rare. As a matter of fact, most of the time when we see couple at the clinic, it's usually the wife that initiates the talk and say, my partner has not been feeling well, is feeling low. Men just say things like, I'm fine, but I just want peace right now. I just want to be left alone. And for couples or people in relationship, when you do hear the man saying things like, can we not do this right now? No, that's the energy level is dropping. It's not that they're being upset or they're angry, but they're processing a lot of things at the back of their mind. Small thing suddenly becomes very overwhelming for them, even to the extent of things like noise in the house. You know, see kids running around the house, which is always normal before, but now you're getting very irritable that the kids are making noise, or your partner is asking so many questions, or you're talking and she's interrupting, and you're like, can I just finish what I'm saying? Can you just let me finish what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that it wants to be unnecessarily angry, but it's just the energy level, the full level is going down. Motivation also changes. And this doesn't mean that he's being lazy. When the testosterone is dropping, the stress hormone rises, which is the cortisol. And when that rises up, then you find yourself not really enjoying the things you used to do before, as excited as before. You're just tired. Lost interest in hobby, loss of interest in social energy. You don't want to go out anymore. You don't want to go visit the family. You just want to stay at home. So it's not that the motivation is disappearing. What we just seen happen in the man is just the biology. It shows that he's exhausted because he has less fuel, less energy being produced in the brain at this time. And it will be a good thing for the partner to understand from this point of view. And this can help to save a lot of blame game. It can help to save a lot of argument in the couple if they realize what is actually going on. It's actually a biological process rather than just a partner just being cranky for no particular reason.
Thank you, Dr. Debo. That was so insightful. You shared that men experience real changes too. how they lose energy, disrupted sleep, shifts in moods. It's funny how you said men don't say, I'm feeling a little bit moody. They don't really say it that way. They act it out. So I appreciate you putting language to that, and that they have often a shorter patience threshold. So it does look a little different than it does for women, but the experience is just as real. And so I think about what this season reveals is our deep need for grace. So much grace towards
Passion.
ourselves, towards each other, and just becoming more and more like Jesus, because midlife has a way of exposing our limits so we can learn patience, humility, dependence, rather than just pushing through and doing the same things that we always did in our earlier life. I want to ask a question to Penny. Let's talk about women now, all right? Why do so many women after 40 feel like their bodies have become unpredictable emotionally, physically, mentally, almost overnight? And we also have women here that are post-menopause.
Yes, I shall do my best. And I have tried to put some of this in the second page to the handout that I did last time. So if you miss some of the detail, then it will be on the handout. I think there is a slightly different flavor to the changes that women experience between perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. But again, these are often things that you understand them better after you've lived it for a little while and you look back. Over the Christmas period, I reviewed some of my diaries going back 10 years when I was right in the middle of menopause. And it's funny because I can see in my diary so much of the frustration and difficulty that I was feeling, which now I can see that's obvious. We know for sure in women that estrogen is like a catalyst. It facilitates the way our nerves work in our brain, and that affects how we think, and it affects how we feel. It affects our ability to handle stress. And that comes in different waves, and it's different in everybody. But what we do know for women is that the changes in estrogen around that time, it's like a cliff edge. But what with women is this sort of, we know we're going along in the run-up to menopause on a straight line, and then over just a few years, our estrogen does this. It is really steep. And whilst men are experiencing a change in their testosterone, that's more of a sort of a glide. I've described it in the handout as, if you think about tiring your car with a slow puncture, that's a little bit like the changes in testosterone for men. But in women, it's not a slow leak, it's a blowout.
It's true.
It's such a big change so rapidly. And as women emerge from menopause, they can generally expect to be running on about 30% of the energy that they had before their menopause, which that's a big difference to manage all of the ways that our emotions are changing, our cognitive abilities are changing. It doesn't mean that we get thicker or we dement, but our ability to perhaps multitask is severely hampered. And you adjust, but it takes time. It's almost a bit like you're running along to catch up with the changes that your body is going through. And it's that sort of lag between what happens to you and learning to adapt that I think can be very frustrating for individuals and in our relationships. And that might be relationships with your partner, it might be relationships in the workplace or with your best friends or other family members that you suddenly turned into this person that they don't recognize. So it's the way estrogen works and the way it stops being quite so effective versus and the speed. Has that answered the question, Pam?
Yes, it does. It does. I love how you explain like such a steep drop. And I love the tire metaphor with men. It's because I've been through the air going off my tire slowly versus a flat tire. And so just describing that contrast helps so much. I know we have a lot of questions coming in the chat. So I'm just gonna do a quick 2-question for any of the panels guests, and any of you can answer, and then I will dive into the questions in the chat. So thank you guys for engaging and putting those questions, because we want to make sure we answer those questions too. So this is the first question. You can just briefly answer if midlife is not a breakdown, but a transition? What does healing and renewal realistically look like on the other side? Tammy, yes.
I'll start, but I'm sure the others have valuable things to say as well. I'll just tell you personally for myself, I wish I had known all of this before. I had hit premenopause in my mid-40s like a brick wall, and I absolutely thought that there was something wrong with me emotionally, spiritually. I lost all my joy, and there was no diagnosis, but life was suddenly. I'm usually a pretty joyful person. I was absolutely miserable. And I really think it would have helped so much to have something like this ahead of time. So thank you so much for providing this for all of us. It's so helpful.
Absolutely. So we're trying to rename midlife not as a breakdown, but a transition. What is that healing and renewal really?
Oh, gosh. So I really do believe there's a physicality part of it, and there's also this emotional, spiritual side where they really do affect one another. We are created to be a whole organism. And I definitely tried to just keep pushing through and had no idea of all this. I just didn't have the skills to pay attention to accumulated disappointments, things I wish had been different or better or more. I just thought that's normal. Everybody's got that. And so after learning that actually I had been avoiding some painful things, I had been minimizing some trauma. And it's not unspiritual or a failure to look in the face of those things. It's not wrong to look back into the past. The past is in the past. What's the point? You can't change the past. There's a huge point in it because we miss things and there are lessons there. So for me, and again, I'm just one individual, but I see incredible changes in all the people that do learn. It doesn't have to be grief recovery, but somehow regain or learn some new tools for how to pay attention to also the emotional energy drain that's been going on up until midlife. Some of the changes for me were, without realizing it, I had been just hacking my schedule busy. Maybe some of us have heard when hard things happen, just keep busy. Just keep busy. It's helpful to serve, and it is. That's a very good thing. But I took it to the extreme, as many people do. You just give, serve, do. And again, that's a very good thing. But I hacked my schedule, and that's, again, a good thing. But amazingly, after I had processed some of my backlog of disappointments and things that I wish had been different or better or more, I suddenly, and I did not make any intentional decision about it, found myself suddenly not compulsively over busy and able to hold a calm space for other people, which I could not do before. Does anybody else feel incredibly upset when you see people venting on social media, for example, or as we said earlier, snapping at your kids? I became so much more unoffendable, untriggerable, because I had taken the temperature down of my own backlog. If you think about our lives, there's a burn of, if you think about us as a tea kettle, life is a fire underneath us. There's always stressful events going on. That's normal. But if we don't have a good way of processing and there's something stuck in our tea kettle spout that tells us just be strong or just keep it in or just put up a brave front or whatever, then all that heat it boils the water inside and there's that energy drain again, right? The energy's got to go somewhere. And it will either explode out in anger, irritable responses, offended responses, we're easily triggerable, or it will implode and we start to be ill, we start to have migraines, our immune system is impacted, and on IBS, high blood pressure, all of these things can be traced to stress, right? The doctors can say probably most of the people who come to visit you are there because of stress in their life. Quite often, a huge percentage of people come to a GP because of stress. There's a huge benefit to the emotional side if we can learn some tools to take the temperature down of our backlog of stress and of emotional disappointment. So we have much more space for our own self-care and for care of other people.
Thank you, Tammy. That was
That's
profound. I think just hearing you, it resonating with me, what I went through in my own life and didn't recognize it at that time and didn't know what to do about it. I know there's another question here. I would like to maybe direct this question to Dr. Debo. What is one mindset shift that would most help men and women stop fighting each other and start navigating the season together? Because I know that I personally needed this help. I needed to go to group coachings or one-on-one coaching and go to people where I can get help from because I couldn't do it on my own. I tried. And as Dr. Penny and Dr. Debo and Tammy pointed out clearly that at this stage in life, we can't do it alone. We need a community. We need help. We need someone who cares enough to say, okay, I'm going to walk this with you. Dr. Debo, what would you say is one mindset shift that each of us could make here today that would help us stop fighting with each other in our relationship and really move towards that self-care?
I think one mindset shift that could really help, I think is it's a very simple one actually, is for couples or for people in relationships to start prioritizing appreciation over criticism. So prioritizing appreciation of your partner over criticism. And it's easier to see a fault than to see what they're doing very well. And so the goal is, instead of focusing on what your partner is not doing, cut them doing something that you're happy with. For instance, simple things like, thank you, honey, for doing the groceries yesterday. Thank you for doing the lawn this evening. Acknowledging their hard work. Thank you for taking out the trash bin. We're focusing on appreciating those little things rather than saying you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And this shift, I think, can create a more positive and supportive dynamic relationship for couples. It changes, you're changing your mindset, and it helps you to appreciate those subtle, beautiful things that your partner has been doing that you have never given yourself the opportunity to realize that they're doing, just because we focus more on those things that they haven't done. And a lot of times when we complain about what our partners are not doing, in their own mind as well, they are going, so she didn't notice that I did it. So I didn't notice that I took out the beat. And then we're creating this tension in the house. But everyone loves to be appreciated. Everyone loves to hear those nice words. As a matter of fact, when we use those nice words for our partners, it improves the reward happy hormone in the brain, the dopamine. So the dopamine is actually the pleasure, the reward center in the brain. And one other thing that it does is that it wants them to want to repeat that act. That thing that they've done well, they will want to try it again another time. So this helps to boost their morale. That's one thing I want to encourage us to focus on appreciation rather than focusing on criticism.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Debo, for. I'm going to move to a question. This is for Penny, and this is from the chat from Funmi. Is taking collagen and all the advertised vitamins and supplements actively help in midlife for men and women? What advice can be given to help with disturbed pattern, sleep pattern, brain fog, reduced energy, motivation, and aches?
You know, if I knew of a pill or a supplement that would fix everything, I would be a multimillionaire. It's not as easy as that. Obviously, HRT is an option, but in terms of supplements, there's a list, and you'll find that in the handouts. But the most important thing you can do is to work on yourself. And I mentioned something in the chat about something called interoception, which is our ability to understand what's going on inside. It's been labeled the eighth sense, because obviously we've got sight, smell, sound, taste, all of these, but the ability to recognize what's going on in our deeper body. And of course, our body is connected to our brain. So whether it's trauma or sadness, that might come out as anger or irritability, but making the time to understand ourselves, either through our own self-reflection and prayer and reading, or through counseling, that's what I think will make the biggest difference. And it's not easy, but it's really worth the investment. Most of us on this call have probably got some kind of a pension. We put aside a bit of money every month towards our future. when you take the time to learn about yourself, and if you're spiritual, if you're religious, then it's exactly the same. That is an investment in your future. And there is great freedom at the end. I think post-menopause, yes, you'll have made adjustments over the last few years, but there's also a freedom because of the learning that you've done that you can look forward to. There isn't an easy supplement fix. You can try it, but you'll spend a lot of money sometimes, and it's not going to make that much of a difference. You're better off doing the work on yourself, like I'm sure Tammy has also been explaining.
Penny, there's been so much good from this call today. I feel spoken to, like in a kind way, in a compassionate way. And so much of this tells me that I'm not alone and I'm not the only one. And I really love what all of you guys shared. I just love how you brought the heart, and not just the heart, but the truth out in a very kind way.
Thank you so much for all the questions, and thank you for our speakers to answer those questions in the comments. I appreciate your heart to navigate this season with knowledge, with compassion as a community so that we can really understand what is happening and really have great marriages and pass it on to the next generation. Thank you so much for your time today. It's so valuable.
Before we wrap up, Pam, I do want to speak to anyone who was listening today and thought this explains so much, but I'm still tired of carrying it alone. We have created a group coaching program, a one of a kind, those people who are interested to go on this journey with us. This is for someone, if you feel like you need to go through this midlife transition, you need to get prepared at the beginning of the year as you set your nervous system and your brain health, and you really want to know, how can I fix this? I'm not broken, but I can get help. And if this is something that you're interested in, we've created a small group coaching experience called the Brain Reset Program. It's 5 sessions of group coaching that we are willing to offer people who are interested to go through this with us. This is not a therapy. It's not a medical treatment. This is not you come and we're going to fix you. No, this is a gentle, practical space where we can work with the brain and nervous system, learning how to calm our body, how to restore clarity, how to regulate our emotions, and how to rebuild habits. And actually, that supports our energy and hormones and resilience. So we try to integrate the brain science, like as earlier we mentioned, coaching tools, as well as nervous system regulation. For those who want it, so because we are not just people, we are not just beings, we are spiritual beings. So this is for people who are interested. So if you would like to join us, please take advantage of it. It'll be on chat and we'll send you in the email as well.
The only thing I would like to say for those that are still on the call, just to realize that all of these changes that we've been talking about right now, they are completely normal. They will happen. They're biology, as we said. But I think what is not normal is suffering in silence. What is not normal is you not talking about it, either with your spouse or not getting professional help. That is what is not normal. But what your partner is going through, what you're going through is absolutely normal. And also to remember that your partner doesn't actually need fixing. If he is not a machine or she is not a machine, doesn't need fixing. I think what they need is they need patience, they need patience, they need you to listen to them. They want you to work together with them as a team. You need to be on the same sides. Communication is key. You want to make sure that you change the tonality of the things you say, rather than saying things like, why don't you talk to me anymore? Why are you always so angry? Words that are soothing, words like, I miss the time that we laugh together. I miss those times that we sit down on our do talks together. Those kind of things come very nice, become very kind. It doesn't sound judgmental. It sounds like you're here to understand them. So remember, nobody needs fixing. It's just the hormone, it's biology. We need to continue to listen to each other. And then I believe that we're doing these things practically. Lastly, I remember this too, picking up habits, things that we could do when we talk about the healing process. In terms of healing after midlife, well, think of picking up new habits. with your partner, go for yoga, go for dancing, learn new skills, pick up that thing that you were interested in before that you never had time to do before, try new things. Surround yourself with like-minded people that appreciate what you're doing. Watch out for friends that put you in a toxic situation, even family. Try to look at people that nourish your soul. Hang around those kind of people. Those things can help to boost the hormones when you sleep very well, you do exercises, the hormones naturally can get to a level that is sustainable without having to go on medication. But it's not all about going to the doctors and getting medication. Most of the time, just lifestyle changes, diet, Mediterranean diets, they have a lot of plants, estrogen, the estradiol, and it boosts it a lot. So those kind of things, exercise, diets, you can do natural things without having to be on any medication. But these are just some of the few things that I remember I wanted to share.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Debo. That was very helpful. I love the part when you said, do the things that you wanted to do before and never got a chance. Go dancing, go walking, go cycling, go to whatever. Do things together. So that's great. Thank you. I think one of the things Pam and I were doing for the past 5 years, with on and off, but mostly, is we've had this Midday Musing podcast that we run where we invite people and have them share knowledge and wisdom so anyone can benefit from it. And we put it on YouTube, it's for free. What I've understood is awareness is good. When we have that awareness, we have to do something about it. We can commit and then take action. We have so much of information. It's on YouTube, it's everywhere. There's so much information, you just don't know what to do. So it can create an overwhelm. There's two things that we can do. We can tell ourselves what is going to be my next step and commit to it. And then when you do commit to it mentally in your heart, the next step would be take action, move towards it, take that one thing that you have to do. I believe if we start with that, we can actually go through this transition not feeling alone, not feeling like nobody understands. Pam and I were going through it. So we're like, okay, let's do something about it. And then we started this podcast. We are so privileged and so grateful that we can do this together.
Thank you so much for all of you joining us and your extra time here. And let's not stay strangers. Let's travel the season together.
Yes, and look out for the email. There will be an email with links as well as the recording. Have a great time.